All right, we are back in 1984 through the lens of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Draven is here with me. We're going to talk about the June issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter in 1984, and we're going to talk about some wrestling of today as well. We have a few questions that we'll throw in at the end. First of all, how's it going?
Going pretty good, man. Just stressing on my Dodgers right now. So that's all. It's baseball season, man. I love it. I hate summertime in general. I always have, but it's baseball season. You can't beat it. I
You're
love
talking
these.
about because of the weather, because it's so hot?
Yeah, it's so hot, and then with global warming, it's just getting more ridiculous in California every year. But yeah, it's also baseball season, so it's always a good time. And to me, it's like a nice bookend because baseball season starts kind of like in the beginning of the year, and then by the time it's over, it's almost towards the end of the year. So it's pretty cool. Weather's changing.
Your baseball team has been going through some rough patches with the starting pitching and the injuries, but because you guys have so much talent, you're able to sustain. And
I don't know
did you
how,
guys win?
man.
Did you guys win yesterday?
No,
Okay,
they
so you
we
still
lost it. We lost in extra innings. Tanner Scott is a flop as a closer, and that concerns me. Um, I know this is not wrestling, but this is definitely financials, and it's really part of strategizing in as far as being a leader of a ship. I would say, what would
yeah.
you do? What would you do with somebody you paid 75 million over 4 years to be your closer, and he's just not getting the job done? What would you do? Would you give him the R-Truth treatment? Would you? No, we don't want to do that because that's a lot of money down. But what would you do? Will you demote him?
I mean, I think you would put all of your pitching coaches to work and just fixing this guy. And the thing about it is, especially when you kind of come from a small pond to a big pond, um, there's pressure that Tanner Scott has never had to deal with in his Major League Baseball career.
Hmm.
And so now every game that he pitches is like an important game. And previously that was not
Well, he
the
was
way
with
that
San
he.
Diego last year, so they were in the
True,
running
true.
there for
I was
for.
I was thinking of even before then, but he's got the stuff. He didn't just unless there's injuries, which can also be the case, and your pitchers are working through that stuff. But I think it's a lot of it's just mental, and he just needs to sort of figure out how to deal with being in a new place and where you're expected to win every game. Like that's just the way it is with the Dodgers right now. If you guys win 95 games, it's kind of like, they kind of underperformed. If you guys win 105 games, people are like, yeah, that's about what I expected. And imagine that, like you're winning 2 out of every 3 games in order to do that. So there's just different pressures
Well, this
in
year there was an
baseball.
expectation that we'd win at least 117, and that's not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
so we're looking at the record. But it's a long season. Uh, you know, Dave Roberts has a strategy which is concerning. He's already blown out the bullpen. We have the lead. We have the lead in bullpen innings pitch, and we're
Yeah.
last. We're last in starter. Innings pitch. So there's concern there.
Yeah. And you and I, my feelings about Blake Snell. So
Yeah,
not that
yeah.
not that I wish injury on him, but he was very frustrating. As good as he was very frustrating.
Are you saying because of his attitude, or he's one of those? I know he's one of those new generation kind of like very entitled pitchers that, they'll only give you what they want to give you. He's got that rep, and then Tyler Glass knows the same way.
Yeah.
So, but I think all these younger pitchers are like that nowadays. You don't have those old school workhorses anymore. You know. Um,
The thing that I don't like about him, and this is specifically based on how the season ended last year. Giants obviously out of the playoff race. He was scheduled to pitch in the last game of the season,
I heard
and
about that. I remember that.
he could have gone out. He could have thrown an inning. He could have thrown 2 innings, 3 innings, and just been done with it, and just tipped his cap. San Francisco, thank you. And he decided not to pitch. And I have a feeling that did not sit well with one Gerald Demp Posey, aka Buster Posey.
That's right. That was a very to bring it back to wrestling, that was a very Miro-ish and very black, when and I guarantee you that now that he's in big market LA, he's probably not going to be busting those moves on Andrew Friedman and those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a lesson in sports, right? And even in wrestling, like some of these guys, it just depends. They'll get away with whatever they feel they'll get away with, at wherever they're at that time.
So I want to shout out Fernando and Maria Graciela, who are always hanging out in the chat, supporting Fight Game Media shows. I love it when I see them in our chat. It brings a smile to my face knowing that they're hanging out with us. So if y'all have any questions whatsoever, definitely send them through.
Yeah, and it's late. I know most of the world is late, so that thank you for that as well.
Okay. So let's get into the show and the lead story. And it's not that big of a story. So I'm assuming that this kind of came in a little later than Dave wanted it to. But the story is that Vince McMahon is getting the WTBS spot, and he buys Georgia Championship Wrestling. Essentially, he gets the majority stock buy, and Dave talks about the antitrust legalities of buying Georgia, as well as buying the TV time in other markets. And he makes sure to tell us that Jack and Jerry are still Mid-Atlantic champions, but they lose their tag strap. but they're about to lose their tag straps. So this time frame, it came about a year and a half before I really was dialed into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It was also probably 2 years before I realized that there was other wrestling outside of WWF. When you just flip the channel and you go, oh, what's that? And it's so funny because the difference to me when I was a kid and it was like WWF versus NWA, the studio, which became something of like a nice thing. I always thought it made the product look like second rate when I was younger. I was like, oh, they're running arenas just like the NBA. And this group looks like they're running out of like a TV studio. Like there's something different about these two. And it had nothing to do about the booking. It had nothing to do about the style. Eventually I saw Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, and I was kind of like, okay, I don't care that they're in this studio. Like those guys are cool. But you were not a fan?
No, actually, I was gonna share that. Actually, 84 is when I had my first memory. That my first memory of life is in 84 because I was born in 80, so I would have been 3 at this time because I was born in November. And I remember we were moving into the house that I grew up in. And I remember there was this my dad's truck. He had a camper on the back, and there was a table that was it broke. I guess he closed it, and then the what do you call it, the pole or whatever of the table, it went through. And I had that vivid memory, and that was in 84 because we moved into that neighborhood in 84.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also remember going to watch they took me to watch A Nightmare on Elm Street 1. In a very one of those old school theaters, here in LA, that doesn't exist anymore. And that was also in 84. So I started my earliest memories are from 84. So wrestling is nowhere near. It would be about 2 years though. It would be 86, 87 when I started watching as well. My neighbors at that time came over and they were like, let's watch this. And then my life changed forever after that.
So I bring up kind of like where I was at that moment because very soon thereafter, if I wasn't watching every weekend the NWA slot on TBS, it was a lot. There were pockets of time where during baseball season or something, maybe I wasn't home and I wasn't that dialed in to record everyone. But when I found out many years later that the WWF was actually on WTBS, I was like gobsmacked. I was like, what? Like, how come I did not know this part of wrestling history? Because neither company ever talked about it there was just no mention of it ever happening. No mention of WWF having taken that slot. And so I was just like, whoa, this is insane. Like it almost feels like this didn't really happen and someone is making this story up. What do you remember when you first heard that story of Vince buying that time slot?
I heard about it maybe in the early '90s through the magazines, and it's funny because perception influences all of us so much that to me it was like, well, if it wasn't a big story then it's not a big story, and I just kind of pushed it out of my brain.
Yeah.
Later on, understanding the dynamics of the Vince McMahon takeover and the war with Teddy Turner, I understood how much of a big deal it really was. And it really was the fuse that lit the fire of that war. Really, I'll recap it really, really quick for the people that don't know. Vince actually approached Teddy Turner very early on, and he wanted to be on the station because he was in the middle of his takeover, and Teddy told him to F off. No, I'm not gonna put it. So Vinny had to think of another way to get in there. And to his credit, right? This guy's, again, we've always put him over. This guy's the devil incarnate in a lot of ways, but he's also a very smart businessman, especially young Vince. He's like, okay, well, if you're not gonna allow me to get in there your way where I want to pay you, then I'm gonna go in there another way. So at that time, Georgia Championship Wrestling, which was really the first one that could really made a dent as far as going national, because they had that national outlet with WTBS. Except Ole Anderson was a horrible booker, and he was very hard-headed. To the day he died, he was very hard-headed. And so the business was really, really going under or down under him, and the other people, that had stock in the company, which was the Briscoes and Jim Barnett. They kind of worked behind his back, and they sold their stock to Vince, and then Vince was able to kind of take them out that way. So that's how Vince ended up going on WTBS, because now he owned the company that had the time slot. Right now, what happened was that he didn't people that were used to a different kind of wrestling. They were used to that live studio wrestling, like you were talking about, and Vince was just kind of giving them house shows, and
stuff
so the ratings,
stuff that everyone was watching. Like it wasn't,
right.
You had this national outlet, and it was tapes that you were showing in the local areas of the other markets.
Right. So to put it in try to bring into today's standards or ways, when Georgia Championship Wrestling was there, you were getting like legitimate Monday Night Raws every week. Like you were getting shows that were tailored towards that culture. You were getting very lively, vibrant shows that were building up to the big Omni shows. And then when Vince came, he just threw on whatever, like just random shows. There's just really not an equivalent nowadays because everybody's so fresh, with their programming. And so the ratings started tanking. Teddy Turner got upset. And then Teddy Turner calls Bill Watts, and he's like, "Yo, I got a time slot for you if you want it, because this guy's tanking my ratings over here." And Bill Watts like, "You betcha, I'm over there." And eventually, I think to save face, because Teddy Turner always had the power to just cancel Vince. Vince started kind of squandering and looking for a way out to save face. Jim Barnett's like, "Well, I know Jim Crockett Jr. Let me give him a call." And eventually, he sold the time slot to Jim Crockett Jr. for $1 million, and then that gave us WCW Saturday Night. And that's where the old argument comes in, where they keep on saying that Raw is the longest wrestling television, whatever. That's not true. I mean, because that show was around a lot longer, and then Portland even longer, but that's a conversation for another day. So that created a lot of animosity between Vince and Ted Turner, where it was a war between Vince and Ted, except Vince was the only one that was actually fighting it, because Teddy Turner was busy conquering other stuff, bigger stuff, to the point that when I saw his documentary on Max, like, they didn't even bring that up. That's such a small part of Ted Turner's life that it wasn't even relevant enough to get like a minute of airtime in his documentary covering his entire life.
I know.
So, yeah.
So you gave a perfect recap of the story as it happened. I just if you're reading the Observer in 1984, as we have been from month to month, as I was reading it, knowing that this was coming, it felt like a natural progression to what he was trying to do. It didn't seem like coming out of left field or anything. It sort of was like, oh, that makes sense. He's trying to take over all these different places, and thus he's found a way to get this thing. Now, I think the thing that maybe even Dave doesn't have in that story yet is how hoodwinked it was and how manipulative it was and how Ted Turner was not going to be happy with it no matter what, unless maybe it just succeeded out of, it just overdid expectations for him, because he was so loyal to the wrestling show. That was the thing that kind of kept that network going in the early days. Like, it was the highest rated program.
The wrestling show and Andy Griffith. Remember, he would always tell that story. The wrestling show, Andy Griffith, and the Braves, I think he would always say.
Yeah. And, if you were watching wrestling back then, Andy Griffith was right before. I don't know how many times I heard the theme song and the whistling to Andy Griffith, just knowing that I had to get through the last couple minutes before wrestling started. So I guess that part is going to be interesting to read as he writes more about it. Because how long does Vince keep this shot?
It's about a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it collapses fast, man. It collapses pretty fast. Yeah, because by 86, I think is when he sells the slot to Jim Crockett, and then Jim Crockett would, he was on his way down to himself the following year after that. So
yeah, totally. All right, so there's not a whole lot about WWF in this issue. Murdoch and Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis win the tag titles from Rocky Johnson, and Tony Atlas right around this time.
Yeah, Tony Atlas leaves. He kind of, and I think he left because he had issues with Rocky Johnson.
Did you watch the Tony Atlas doc, The Dark Side?
No, I lost track with all those, man. I need to marathon, get a Saturday and just marathon to all of them because I like them. It's just this time around is just I just never had time for them.
This was a good season. This season was way better than I thought it was going to be. I think you'll really enjoy the Daphne episode.
I did see that one because of the mental health part,
right.
Which is kind of like my jam. So
they handled that with so much responsibility. I thought that was awesome. Amazing.
It was a really, really good episode. It didn't feel like they were exploiting her at all. It was, and it had a lot of what we call psychoeducation, and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really good episode. So I'm excited to listen to the other 9 or whatever, or watch, I should say.
The Tony Atlas one, probably I would put it in the bottom half of the show, of the ones from this year. There is he can be super honest and he can hand wave at the same time, almost like it's like a magic trick that he does, because he can really grab you and endear you when he's just so honest about something that happened, negative thing. And
that Brody story that he tells in that documentary, I mean, you're captivated, and he's so sincere and honest, and I believe him. I'm sure all that was true because it's hard to fake that emotion, but you're right. Then he's also full of shit a lot of the time too.
Yeah, he is. He was talking about how somebody had told him that he was on the list of possible champions for Vince. This would have had to have been pre-Hogan.
Yeah,
and he kind of threw opportunities away, and then he leaves, and he doesn't. It's kind of unclear why he left or whether he was forced out or what. So there, this part of time in the Tony Atlas doc doesn't really cover it all that well. But I just wanted to note that. Also, Buzz Sawyer comes in. How long is Buzz Sawyer in WWF?
It's got to be a cup of coffee, man. It's got to be, because this guy wouldn't last anywhere. I mean, he would come in, get high, piss someone off, and then he's on his way.
Con somebody out of money and bounce.
Yeah, Mark Calloway, whomever. But yeah, watch, rinse, repeat for years until he passed away in '92.
Yeah, no, you're right. I didn't even think about that. So the next issue,
he should get an episode, although I don't think he's big enough to get an episode. But Buzz Sawyer is very interesting. He needs to get an episode for sure.
That would be an interesting one for sure. So the next issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, so the July issue, is the Vince Senior dies issue. So I've withheld myself. I have not dove into that story yet, but that is next when we do our next one is Vince Senior passing away. All right, so finally it happens. We've been talking about this for a little while. Kerry Von Eric beats Ric Flair and holds the NWA World Title for 18 whole days before losing it back. Do you know who Kerry's first title defense was against?
No. Let me know. Who was it?
So Dave was there in person.
Wait. I think I know.
Go for it.
So I'm gonna assume that as soon as he won the title in Texas Stadium back in '84, where his mother was in the ring, and in the movie she's watching herself in the ring, by the way, which is weird, because in the movie she's at home watching it on in the living room, but they're showing the real footage and she's in the ring, which is weird. So I'm gonna say Giant Baba.
It's Terry Gordy.
Okay, but is it in Japan?
No, it is in. Dave was there, so I don't know the actual venue. But
see, when
Dave
you say Dave was there, that wasn't a clue because he was in Japan and in Texas during this time. So who knows? So I took a shot in the dark. I was like, because I know that Kerry lost it in Japan, right?
Yes.
It's 18 days later or whatever. So I was like, okay, he goes to Japan because I think he did wrestle. Anyways, yeah. So it was.
Terry Gordy. What? It's quite possible it was in Japan, but because I'm trying to figure out. I just assumed it was like the next day or something. But Dave says Kerry's first title defense was against Gordy, and he says it was one of the 5 best matches he's ever seen live.
And both of them were out of their minds. So who knows
probably.
how sober they were.
So Dave actually tells a little bit of history here. He says that in March, so this would have been before, Harley Race beats Ric Flair in New Zealand, which was supposed to be a hush-hush title change. But Dave blames the Japanese magazines and the photographers, and then Flair wins it right back 3 days later. This is a title defense or a title change that I would not have even learned about probably in sometime in the 2000s, I think.
So who are we going to blame for Mexico learning that, Il de Vikingo beat Alberto El Patron before he actually beat him? That's my question. Well, are we also blaming the magazines during this time?
So do you think, I'm of the opinion, because Dave is of the opinion that it was like an oversight, or they thought that the Mexican market wasn't going to care, or that the information wasn't going to get, like, I don't believe that at all. I think WWF or WWE just didn't care. They're like, who cares? We have a show to promote. They
didn't care. Yeah, they didn't care. I have a promo on WWE right now.
We'll talk about Worlds Collide at the end of the show.
Yeah, but there's already a lot of I don't care bombs on that show itself. And I'm still waiting for that ring, man. One of the biggest I want people to understand, if we see that 6-sided ring gone, then it's over. I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now, because now that's a huge staple of AAA. That 6-sided ring is a huge staple of AAA. It's pretty much their identity in a lot of ways. So if there's a regular 4-sided ring, then that's all she wrote for that company. They'll be on Sci-Fi with the zombie, within 6 months from now.
Dave would do these things in the issue because, if you're doing it on a typewriter, then you can only go from early, and then as you get later in the issue, it's all the stuff that comes in late. So he has a late flash. Rick Martel downed Jumbo Tsuruta on May 13th in St. Paul to win the AWA title. Ending of the bout saw Jumbo go for a vertical body block. Martel caught him and dropped his throat and mouth on the top ropes. Martel then came off the ropes with a cross block and cradled him for the count. This is the Rick Martel pre-model, the famous version of Rick Martel, where he wins the AWA title. I always thought this was another one where I'd get the wrestling magazines And then, you know how when you get the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, they would have the back issues, and
Yeah,
you could see the cover of the back issues. And then this is 1987 or whatever, and I'm looking back to like 84, and I'm like, Rick Martel, the guy that's in Strike Force, he was the world champion in AWA.
that's right.
Time moves fast, man, in this industry, and we're kind of at the precipice of that in 1984. So that's why it's also very fun to talk about this time frame.
What about, and this is a time where you were, I'll give you another trippier example. This is a time when you were already dialed in. What about Ronnie Garvin? Because Ronnie Garvin wins the title in late 87, and he's a job guy in like mid 88 in WWF at that point. That's a real trip to me, you know?
As a kid, I really liked the Garvin and Flair stuff. I was so amazed that the crowd basically turned Ric Flair babyface in that match, because I didn't get it yet. I didn't get that part of it. Like, Ronnie Garvin, he threw a crazy right hand. You could end the match at any time. Like, he must
Right.
be like a tough guy. But I didn't realize at that point that it was kind of a mistake, that people didn't really see him as the champ. I thought Flair made him look so amazing. Like, I thought Flair made him look like just an ass beater. But I was like 13, so I was like 11. So what did I know? And then just to see how quickly he kind of went back down. You know what also is interesting about that time frame? I think the reason why I sort of believed and I was okay with it is because back then they would do the Great American Bash tour.
Mm-hmm.
And so every night they would kind of promote that Rick was defending against a new guy. And so it was like Ric Flair versus Jimmy Garvin on this night, Ric Flair versus Ricky Morton, Ric Flair versus Road Warrior Hawk. So because they did that tour, I just assumed that all of these guys were worthy of title shots, so they could win the title. Like, that's just what happens. The champion's defending, he could always lose. And thus Ron Garvin, was good enough to be the champion. But I just didn't understand wrestling as well yet. So I was kind of into it. And then when he does come over to WWF, I'm like, oh wow, this is great. Like, and then you see how much smaller he is than everybody else.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he's very. He gets his size gets exposed big time.
And then he's like in a feud with Greg the Hammer Valentine, who is as mid card as it would get in WWF. And so I was like, oh man, it was almost like like a Tooth Fairy kind of moment. Like, all the stuff that I just watched was not real. Like, it was just a figment of my imagination. And this is what they're telling me that this is right now, which is kind of, I'm sure, is the reason why Vince did that, right?
Of course. Yeah. He did that with a lot of guys. But with Rick Martel, I mean, because he was always promoted as this white meat baby face. The best thing that could have happened to him was the model gimmick, because in the WWF at that time, nobody was going to be the top babyface. Nobody except Hogan. Yeah. So you wanted to be a heel in the WWF. The big money was a heel run against Hogan.
Yeah.
So it was like nobody wanted to be a babyface there, because at best you were going to be like the second, maybe even third, Jim Duggan, Jake the Snake. That's it. So the best thing that happened to Rick Martel is that he turned heel and he got a good run as the model.
Yeah. It was great for him. It was one of the gimmicks where when you hear about it, you're like, this thing's going to suck. And then when you see it, you're like, oh, this thing's actually going to be really awesome.
Yeah, well, it was a good combination of the cartoon land that he was at. He had that big old button that said, "Yes, I am a model." That he would put on. He had arrogance, which what a great name for a heel cologne, arrogance. Who came up with this stuff, man? Because we do have to put them over. Like, that was just so cool. So yeah, it was a perfect fit for that era.
This is also the time where Ken Patera and Masa Saito throw the rock through the McDonald's and get arrested,
and go to jail.
right around this time, and then beat up the female police officer, right? Like, that's part of the story.
Yeah, no, they went to jail for a long time. Patera more
And
so than Masa Saito for some reason. Maybe because he was the aggressor.
or maybe he was just like he doesn't understand English, man. Like,
The Jimmy Snuka route, right?
yeah, he's the Patera's the ugly American. Like, this guy is just kind of along for the ride. He doesn't know. When going back to 1987, when Ken Patera comes back to WWF, the storyline is that when he was incarcerated, Bobby the Brain Heenan was his friend and did not contact him in jail.
That's
That
right.
was the storyline.
Yeah.
And they did vignettes. They did stuff where you hear the jail bars clanking. Like, I will always remember that, even though Ken Patera back then in 1987, he was like a shadow of, and plus he was WWF-ized. He wasn't the same Ken Patera, but it was almost like this guy was in jail since 1984 and he's just coming out of jail and he's coming right to WWF. Like, that was what I thought that the story was, is because of how they told it. But I will always remember that whole thing, the Ken Patera story.
They should have ran a story because Ray Traylor came soon after. They should have run a story where Ray Traylor was a young, up and coming corrections officer, and he meets Patera in jail, and Patera does the Mr. Miyagi thing where he teaches him the ropes in jail, and he decides to quit his job as a corrections officer and then go over to WWF, and the rest is history. And they both used to bully this guy called Kevin Wackles, who was Nails, who was in jail with them, and then he would come out years later and get his revenge. But Patera was already gone by then, so he couldn't get revenge on him. Anyway, see, you connect all these dots, man.
Layers.
All of Bank would do
layers.
that nowadays.
Yeah, that's layers and layers of stories. All right, so we'll move on, and this is WWE related, because WWF related, because the territories are, as the story that we've been telling on this entire year of '84, the territories are just affected by Vince McMahon's U.S. domination of the wrestling scene. So Dave writes about Portland, and we know that Portland is one of the territories that actually does exist. It doesn't become like a crazy successful territory, but it does exist until they basically
91.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's the second to last. Besides Memphis, who would officially die in like 97. But
Yeah.
but the thing that they both had was that they had sponsorships. That's what kept both of those territories afloat, where the other companies did not have sponsorships.
So the Portland area is under deep fire at present, as WWF's TV show has sprung up in Portland. At the same time, the group's TV show in Seattle was suddenly canceled. Nobody knows yet if WWF TV will take its place there. There's a very good chance that should the WWF debut in the Northwest Live, that Buddy Rose will jump, and possibly one or two others will follow. And Playboy Buddy Rose is in the opening match at the very first WrestleMania.
That's right. Nobody is the executioner, but I hear you. This would become a moot point because the Pacific Northwest would introduce drug testing and licensing, and WWF would be like, see you later until you change that. We ain't coming anywhere close to that. So that would change. It would be a few years before they would go back. So
yeah.
So that's what happened there. And that's probably why Don Owen was able to kind of chuck along for a while longer, because he had no competition for a long time. WWF wasn't going over there and running shows for many years. So yeah, that's what happened with that story.
So Dave writes about the San Francisco. We've been following the San Francisco situation. I even mentioned this on a recent edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, where we were talking about kind of this current competition with WWE and them just trying to overpower everything AEW. And I was talking about how I just got done reading in the 84 issues where WWF actually bought the rights to where AWA had their television show right before AWA was about to run a house show. So AWA couldn't promote and they didn't draw. And then they had to go and get a lesser station. And so I told that story on Wrestling Observer Radio. And then someone reached out to me and was telling me the exact station, the exact time the show came on, and everything. So this is still very vivid in memory. So so this is very similar. So Dave says, one thing about the San Francisco situation that I find hilarious is that the AWA's charges on invasion on their territory, I guess they don't remember history very well. Didn't they originally invade the Bay Area when it was Roy Shires' territory? Isn't their TV time, which was later stolen by WWF, originally a theft of their own from the ICW, which at one point was attempting to invade the Bay Area? So he's just calling AWA out for crying about stuff that they did as well in the past.
Yeah, typical Carney stuff, though. I mean, when they do it, it's fair game, but when it's done to them, you know, they don't stop crying about it. That's classic Carney stuff right there.
And this stuff is kind of fun because when Rick loses the title to Kerry, he's no longer the NWA champion, but he has bookings that he still has to do. So he goes to the Central States, and he was supposed to defend against Wahoo. But now that he's not the champion, it's not a title defense, and thus Wahoo can pin Ric Flair in front of the home crowd. So I think stuff like that is so cool and so fascinating. Like, imagine, on one hand, you don't know that Rick is losing the title. You think you're going to a show where Rick's the NWA champion. You're going to see a title defense. Still, if you're a little smart to the business, you're like, okay, Wahoo's not winning, but at least we get to see him face Rick. And then Rick comes in, he doesn't have the title, and then you get to see Wahoo beat him. I think stuff like that is so cool.
Yeah, and you know it was Wahoo who requested that. You know, Rod's like, "Yo, you're not the champion. You're going down tonight. I mean, I'm gonna down you, or whatever the term was. I'm going up. That's what the term.
Yeah,
was.
That's what LaRocco always says. Whenever I do prediction stuff with him, like, we'll do a prediction thing for this weekend for, like, if it's like Becky and Lyra, he'll go, yeah, I'd go Becky up, and he'll just stick the thumb up.
Yeah, that's like the old Booker term.
Booker speak.
Yeah, so Wahoo was like, I'm going up tonight, brother. Because he was one of those guys that would protect his spot quite a bit. You know, Wahoo was one of those guys. So I could see it. And then Rig, I mean, traditionally, Rig never really made a fuss about that. It seems to me that Rig was in the business of professional wrestling just to, like, get drunk and get laid and never get out of high school. And then his talents just came out. That was just a byproduct of him wanting to just be in a business where he never had to grow up, you know? So you never hear stories about Rick making a fuss about doing jobs ever, even before he got old, you know, or before Bischoff was abusing him. He just did jobs. Like, okay, you want to go over? I don't care. As long as I get to get drunk tonight and, you know, spend $5,000 when I only made $3,000. Okay, let's do it. You know? Which, you know, more power to him, I guess. Every year he's losing his mind more and more, but that's just Rick.
God, he did not have a good week this week.
No, he didn't, with the Jim Ross tweet and all that stuff, you know.
The Ric Flair consent form or whatever.
Oh, that's right. I read. Oh
my God, this dude's losing it, man. Did I tell you that I was in when I was in Vegas, I saw him?
No, you didn't. Jesus Christ.
So
when I hear Rick in Vegas, I get scared. You know?
Okay, so it's WrestleMania weekend, right? Dave's trying to find Rick. He's trying to hang out with Rick or just to say hi to Rick. And they're not in contact for whatever reason. So I see Rick out, and he's got.
What do you mean for whatever reason? Look at how Rick's been the last 2-3 years. You know?
Well, I don't know why, like, they just weren't able to connect. Whether they were trying to connect.
Oh, you mean like lately?
Or Twitter or whatever.
Okay.
So I see Rick, and I was like, oh, like, you know, we interviewed Rick like a year ago. So I was like, oh, I'll see Rick. I'll say hi. I'll remind him that I interviewed him, and I'll tell him that Dave, you know, is looking for him. And so I'm about to walk over there. This dude is not well. He's hunched over. So he'd probably been on his feet all day, not feeling great. And he is angry with somebody and just frustrated, probably that he even had to be there. Like, he was just mad. So I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this guy alone. And so then I told Dave the next day, I was like, oh yeah, I saw Rick. I was like, I was going to say hi to him. And I was like, and he was like, oh, you should have. And I was like, no. And then I told him, he's like, yeah, don't you did the right thing. That would have been good. So, man, kind of sucks. You hate to see the guy in these like weird scenarios, and then when it comes to social media, you're like, is that really him? Is that someone else doing it for him? Like, who knows?
Yeah. But I wonder if that's just old age or him just with all his demons and stuff. Because people do get cranky as the older they get, even if they're not doing any drugs or drinking. It's just it's sad when your body starts to like tear down and you're still actually alive to actually experience that. That's gonna get anybody cranky. It's messed up, all of a sudden you can't do the things you used to be able to do, but your brain is so powerful that you still want to do stuff. So old people always get cranky for that reason, and we have to kind of be empathetic over that. But with Rick, it could have just been that he was really messed up.
Yeah.
Or just tired from being messed up.
All right. Dave has a moment where he did an interview with a guy, and the guy like misquoted him and kind of made him look bad. So he kind of goes to town on the guy in the issue. But he also, and this is kind of the main event. This is what I wanted to get to. He gives his list of top workers. I think he may have actually gone to 50. I think I cut it off at 20. But I'm just going to read you his order because he did put these guys in order. And remember, this is not just
Terry Funk has got to be number one.
No, Terry Funk is not number one. Terry Funk is not even on this list. And I wonder if it was because he was like in the middle of like retirements or something.
Okay, I haven't read the list, but before you get to the list, I'm not going to try to guess number one, but I will say that there's, because I part of me wants to say somebody from Japan, but Dynamite Kid is not from Japan. And also, at this point, I know he's still in Japan at this point. No, he's about to come over and be with Vince. Okay. So you give me the list. I was gonna try to guess, but there's too many variables.
I'll read the list and I'll give you his reasoning, and then you can chime in and crack wise on it. So here's how Dave judged the wrestlers. He says, hard, fast action, good technical skills, and the aura of realism. There are many fine performers.
What does that mean? Dave, when you throw somebody to the ropes, they shouldn't be coming back. That's one of the things about when people. I don't know. I was gonna get me on a rant. I'm not gonna. I just hate when people criticize when you have that division of people criticizing wrestling.
Yeah,
that are wrestling fans say it looks too fake. What is wrestling is fake. You can't throw somebody to the ropes and they're gonna come back. It's just. But anyways.
There are many fine performers in this business who may be good in other important facets, such as heating up the crowd, but that is something I don't take into nearly as much consideration personally. So this is 1984 Dave. You got to remember he's in his 20s.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, here's his list. Number 1, Ric Flair.
Okay. And he was seeing a lot of Rick. He was seeing a lot of Rick during this time.
And so this is 1984 Rick. And even in 1984, Dave writes, he may have slowed a bit, but he is so consistently excellent, and his aura is such that when he does make a mistake, it is easily overlooked.
This is 36-year-old Ric Flair, by the way.
Yeah.
35, 36.
But here's the other thing. How do you know if Rick is making a mistake or not?
Well, when he tries to do that wacky flip over here,
but he's probably hitting it every single time.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's hard, and also he's very he has the same match pretty much every night, which is one of Bret Hart's criticisms.
Right.
So it's hard for him to have a bad match, because we won't know because we don't know if it's. So I don't know.
Number 2 surprised me. I would have never guessed. Number 2.
Go ahead.
Is Davey Boy Smith.
Wow, that is a surprise.
Without a doubt, athletically, the best superstar in the business. I would be surprised if he isn't number 1 within 2 years.
What a mark, Davis. He's calling him a super. Look, he appreciates his work rate, and he's calling him a superstar for that reason. He's not a superstar.
Okay. I agree with you because Dave likes being ahead of the curve. That is, he's like a scout in a sense, right? The scout wants to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve.
Yeah.
But the thing about this one is, like, only Dave and people who influence Dave are really high on Davey Boy Smith, is my guess. I've always been of the opinion that Dave was negative on Davey Boy Smith for his entire career.
Well,
I never knew he was
when he
this
was
high.
lazy and bloated, so I guess we could say that in hindsight, staying with the British Bulldogs and WWF maybe derailed his superstar potential a little bit because he was a tag team guy for a while. And then he would come back in 91, and that's when he started getting lazy. So yeah, who knows what would have happened with Davey Boy had he not teamed with Dynamite and gone to WWF full time.
Well, the other thing about it is, if you read that old Dynamite book,
I have it. It's one of my favorite books, and you can't get it anymore.
It seems like Davey was a little wet behind the ears on the business.
He was very naive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, number 3. This one's not a surprise. Bruiser Brody
says, buddy.
Yeah, limited in many ways. Nobody gives an aura of violent realism more. And in Japan, he rarely has anything but a great match.
I've always thought he was a little overrated. I've heard the legend of Bruiser Brody since I was a kid, and he's never had what I would call, and even trying to put myself in that time frame, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. He's okay. I mean, I just don't like the fact that he doesn't sell a lot, and he was very agile. Like when he decided to take bumps, he's a good bump taker, but that wasn't very often. So I don't know. I guess he was a product of his time. You had to really be there to just be captivated by his presence, because his presence was a huge part of Bruiser Brody's presentation.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about when you just said you try to put yourself in the place and time? I was trying to do that last night. You know what movie I watched? Death Wish with Charlie Bronson.
That's a horrible movie, man. Sad and it always bothered me that Jeff Goldblum never got his comeuppance. He never.
Why did he do that role? Why was Goldblum in that movie?
Well, that was early. I'm sure he didn't have a lot of leverage in Hollywood at that time. That might have been his first role. That was very early in his career. I thought you were gonna ask why Charlie Bronson did that movie.
Well, Charlie Bronson did it because it made him like a box office draw, the biggest one at that time, probably for like a year. But
yeah,
the thing. So as I'm watching this movie, the gunplay is, one shot and he hits every single time. The blood is super fake. But the thing that tonally that you can just see in this movie. So if anyone doesn't know Death Wish, it's the story of a guy whose wife gets killed and his daughter gets raped by just the New York City's, desperate and crazy doldrums and just crime everywhere. So he's like, what is he, like an architect or something? Like
he's an architect. He's an architect.
And so basically he takes justice in his own hands because the cops basically tell him, like, maybe we find these guys, maybe not. Like, join the club. This is happening all over the city. And so he takes justice into his own hands. And so much so that he sort of believes that he is kind of a crime fighter. And he's like picking on people who are just there to like try and take $5 from him. And he's got a gun and he pulls a gun on. So he kind of goes crazy.
It's a very right-wing film, by the way. It's very, and I think there was this subtle, I don't know how much he pulled it off, but you're supposed to also believe that he's losing his mind. And it's supposed to give you this whole like morality tale of like the monster becomes the monster. That's why you're not supposed to take revenge, because so in that sense, I guess it works, but it was also like a trashy B movie, because this is right after Charlie Bronson's, like, he's done as an actor, he's washed up. So this kind of gave him a second life in that B movie grindhouse era, which is a conversation for another time. But that was a whole different genre, By the time we get to part 3, which was bought by Canon Films, I mean, this guy, it gets so cartoony and wacky where he's taking on entire gangs by himself. But the first two, part 1 and part 2, are very dark, and I don't know. I don't enjoy watching them, but they're a part of history. I mean, I've seen them a couple times. But yeah, Charlie Bronson was done by this point, and I understand why he did it. But it does have some social commentary on it. So
supposedly the author of the book, in which the movie was based, was very frustrated with the movie because basically what you said is the aspect of the book was about the social commentary about this guy losing his mind. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, they made it seem like the guy was like a cool guy. And so Charles Bronson had a commentary on that guy's commentary, and he basically said, no, I think we did a really great job of showing how, demented that the character got. But whatever. I watched that movie and I was like, I get it, but they're still trying to make him a cool guy at the end. All these harmless people. So, and poor wife dies, and the daughter is just out of, like, she's just all drugged up and a mummy. And this dude is like, just doesn't care. He's like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, there's some. If you really analyze it, he's very selfish. Instead of being there for his daughter, he goes out and tries. And he never catches the people that did it. Like, at least the people that did. He goes to, he's projecting a lot of that to other criminals. And don't watch part 2 because essentially it happens again and to the daughter. And so, but part 3 through 5 are just fun. They're schlocky, they're wacky. But yeah, that was old Charlie Bronson. Never thought I was gonna be talking about him tonight.
Charlie Bronson, baby. There's a funny, like, I guess, rumor or internet research part about the casting, and I think someone said that they thought Elvis may have been asked to do the role. How is that? That's Elvis not alive much longer after that.
This is in 76. Elvis died in 74, 75.
I think 70. I think the movie's 74 actually.
Oh, 74. Okay, so it's he died in 72, I think.
Oh, okay.
But these things are in production way before we see them, so it's possible that he got offered the role, But yeah, Charlie Bronson was very charismatic. That also doesn't help.
My grandmother thought he was very handsome. I remember that for sure.
Oh yeah, okay. When he was younger, man. Yeah, he definitely was.
Okay, so back to the list. Number 4. He wasn't. I don't think he was known as the cowboy here yet, but Bob Orton Jr., who Dave calls an extremely gifted performer, but often must be held back for fear of overshadowing his opponents.
I could see that. I think he's very underrated. I've seen a lot of Bob Orton Jr. stuff, and he's awesome. He's and I could see. So I'm under the assumption now that Dave is trying to, like you said, he's trying to think about the future. He's trying. These are all like future stars that he's.
Who does Vince have his eye on to be, the guy who's facing Hogan in the next big Madison Square Garden match? I think that's how he might be looking at it.
Yeah, and Bob Orton did get to wrestle him in Saturday Night's Main Event. So
did I ever tell you? I may have told you this years ago, but I'll tell this audience. I want to say the year was like 87 or something. There was a Memorial Day Superstars of Wrestling, and Hulk Hogan had a random title defense on Superstars, and it was against Cowboy Bob Orton. And I was like, this is weird. Like, he never wrestles on this show. Like, there was like him and Orndorff against the Moondogs, but it's like, that was set up for an angle. And I was like, Hogan title defense. This is weird. I wonder why they're doing this. So my dad realizes that I'm kind of thinking like something's kind of interesting here. And he goes, oh yeah, I heard Bob Orton won the match. And I was like, what? I was like, there's no way, right? But at the same time, as I'm saying there's no way, in the back of my mind is like, what if this really happened? Like, how am I going to feel about this? Am I going to be mad? Am I going to be what? So anyways, I think the top rope also breaks in this match. And my dad used that to say, see, I told you something's funky here. And so I was like, oh no, but then Hogan drops the leg and wins. And I was like, I looked at him and he's just started laughing at me. So
Hogan must pose. That was Vince's philosophy. Hogan must pose.
So that's even a bigger memory for me than the Saturday Night Main Event match that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay. Next is a guy that you actually you thought could be number 1 or 2 was the Dynamite Kid.
of
So
course.
he's number 5 on Dave's list. Dave writes, he's lost some stamina with his added muscle. Thus, his work rate has dropped. But in many ways, he's still about the best pound for pound.
So it was Dave that one that created that work rate. I always wonder where it came from.
I don't know. I guess 1984. He's talking about work rate.
Because notice he doesn't use it anymore. Like he doesn't talk. There's a lot of little terms like that he never whips out anymore.
So the next one is a surprise, but Dave has actually talked about this guy as being like a great for a few years, and that's Butch Reed, 1984 Butch Reed. Oh, actually, sorry, Terry Gordy, and then Butch Reed. What he says about Butch Reed, though, is phenomenal strength and great athletic skills. Now that he's gotten to where he controls heat well, there's no stopping him. There's no stopping Butch Reed.
I trip out on it's early. He's trying to come up with terminology to explain the uniqueness of professional wrestling, right? So like controls heat well. How would he say that today? Just getting heat, right? So they're just getting heat. They get heat. He got heat in the match. Whereas back then it was controls heat well, It's weird how these terms have like changed over the years.
So then he says, so after Gordy, then Butch, Chavo Guerrero. He says almost everything he does is flawless.
Chavo classic. Yeah, he's too small though. He invented the moonsault, by the way.
Yeah. What did he call it? I
don't know, side salto. I don't know.
They called it like the reverse body block off the top rope or something like that.
Right. Yeah, because he wasn't doing the Great Muta moonsault. He was doing that other one where the guy's standing waiting to catch him.
Yeah. So next is Paul Orndorff, who he says is a superior athlete and wrestler who often doesn't get to show his best because of his mostly weak WWF babyface opposition, but for some reason is a very boring wrestler when he's in Japan.
Okay, I mean I thought he was always a great worker,
and his he will gain much fame over the next 3 and 4 years.
Yes.
Being Hogan's top second.
Yeah, we're about a year away from that actually.
Adrian Adonis.
I love that guy, man. So underrated, man. So freaking underrated, that guy. Okay, I just saw him at WrestleMania 3. I was watching it again. So he's just bumping like a madman for a big guy.
You'll love what Dave says about Adrian. He says,
"Well, he's gonna make fun because he was a big bone individual, like he always does with everybody that's big bone.
Would be number 1 if he was in any kind of condition to wrestle in singles, but his 300-pound current frame limits him."
Can you imagine young Dave's like vanity? Like I could see it. Like, I mean, he needed the Narcissus mirror. He needed it in San Jose over by the beach.
Yes. All right. So then we'll go through the rest of these quickly. Sergeant Slaughter was next, and he basically said he's great at bumps for his size.
Yeah, agreed.
But he's not sold on his new role as far as it taking advantage of his best skills, which I believe is babyface in WWF.
This was a couple months before Vinny would give him that contract for the toys, right? And then Slaughter would be like, "Nah, I need my own royalties from this," and then he would be gone.
Tatsumi Fujinami is next, just says he's consistently excellent. Mm-hmm. Stan Hansen, excellent work rate on the other side of the Pacific to go along with that great violent aura. Ricky Choshu, technically excellent, perhaps the best tag wrestler around. And this one surprised me because of how far we got down this list before this name came up. Ricky Steamboat. Tremendous athlete. In some ways, his lack of weight hurts his credibility in the States, but he's well known for his work rate.
So he's subconsciously telling him to get on the juice, like
And he
Vince
would.
told Rick Rude. Yeah, like Vince told Rick Rude all those years ago when Rick Rude wanted to have kids.
Masa Saito is another tremendous technician. Kevin Von Eric doesn't know how to sell well, but his role never forces him to sell. A magnificently graceful athlete in the ring.
Okay, well, it is okay, I guess. Blew a lot of spots, hurt a lot of people.
Buzz Sawyer, a true maniac once the bell rings. And
Yeah.
finally, we get to the number one star in the business, Hulk Hogan. Many don't like him because he's limited in some ways, but he's an exceptional ham, in parentheses, or in quotes, ham, and does wrestle very hard, at least outside the WWF.
Wait a minute. Wait, I'm gonna do the old Jesse Ventura here. Wait a minute, Gorilla. I have a complaint. So with Okada, all of a sudden Dave gives him this weird mental gymnastic pass where he has to get 25 minutes to have a 5-star match, or else he's just gonna suck, and we just have to accept it. But with Hogan, he couldn't give him the benefit of the doubt that he's wrestling in the WWF ring, but when he's in Japan, he's actually a hell of a great worker. Like, how I want 25-year-old Dave to visit 60 whatever year old Dave and make their story make sense, because it's two different wrestlers and one's getting a pass and the other one isn't, and I don't think that's fair. By the way, as a side note, because I for whatever reason I started listening to Brian and Vinny again just because I got nostalgic. First of all, I forgot how very KLB-ish that show was. I really did. They really kind of just let loose.
Yeah.
But I feel, okay, so Brian has come to terms with what we all have come to terms with, that Okada now is not the wrestler he used to be, and we just accepted it and we're okay with that. Dave's the only one that hasn't accepted it. I mean, he's in denial about it to the point where well, they were reviewing a match the other day, and Brian's like, it pretty much sucked. And Dave is like, it's okay, it was okay. But he was ready to move on. Like, he didn't want to talk about Okada sucking.
Yeah.
So Okada's not what he used to be, and we all just gotta face it. And he probably never will be. He's beat up. He's mid-30s now, almost 40, I think.
Okay.
Not almost 40, but he's getting there.
Okay, you just said that. Do you think he wants this Omega match? Because think of what these dudes have to live up to.
Oh my God, I hadn't even thought about that. I think I'm gonna be there live for that, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't because I'll be at a wedding. My wife's best friend is getting married, so I'm out on that one. But that, just think about Omega too. Like, these guys.
Omega's also beat up.
But Omega did have the match with Gabe Kidd earlier this year, which was fantastic. My favorite match of the year so far.
Omega just knows how to work. He's such a great worker. He knows his limitations. He reminds me a lot of Bret Hart. It's like, in that they'll give you a great match, and it's not always going to look the same. You know what it is? Omega knows how to adapt to his opponents. He does that very well, no matter who he wrestles. Whereas Okada has his style, and that's it. And because he really can. I'm thinking it's because physically, or maybe he just doesn't want to. Maybe he's making a lot of money. He's like, you know what, the Japan days are over. He just doesn't adapt. So we're gonna get the same Okada match at a lower speed. That's the difference. But now the question becomes, when they do match up, do we have a modern Okada match with Omega, or does Omega kind of like make Okada work a little more? We'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're gonna need at least 35 minutes, by the way.
I think so.
I think that show's gonna go like at least 8 hours. It might be like one of those old All Japan women shows that will go 12 hours, because Tony Khan is gonna want to give all these guys like 30 minutes to tell their story, because this is the big blow-off show of the year.
Yeah.
So anyways.
All right, last three here. Ted DiBiase, formerly a top 5 wrestler who appears to have almost been ruined by his long stint in the Mid-South against the Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, well, he hates the Junkyard Dog, so.
And then the last two, Dick Slater looks better than ever in the Carolinas, and then Roddy Piper, at least based on November, December in Mid-Atlantic. In WWF, this rating appears to be too high. Poor Rod.
I don't think he's. Yeah, because like the Road Warriors are all show. They're not workers, so he couldn't throw them in there.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't throw Kerry in there. Kerry was kind of a big deal at this time, but he chose to go with Kevin instead. So
Yeah. He even had Hogan over Kerry.
yeah. Oh, actually, there's 50 of them. You just said 20, so maybe
Yeah,
there's the other
I
30.
only did the top 20.
Yeah. So
all right, let's get to our comedy Dave segment here. By the way, I still haven't found a longer laugh, so we're gonna have to deal with this one. All right, not too much.
No, you
comedy
did find it. You just didn't pull it. That was the thing.
Yeah, I found it, and then I was like, "Where is this clip at?" And then I couldn't find it, so I was like, "Forget it. I'll find another one." All right, not too much comedy, though. I did read one to him on the air on Wrestling Observer Radio, which I'll tell you about in a second. No, actually, I read him one from the last show that we did. Not the. It was about Jules Strongbow or something, I think.
Oh, okay.
All right, so here's Comedy Dave. So he talks about Killer Khan. Besides Killer Khan, who looks pretty good. Oh no, this is the right one. Who looks pretty good. Newcomers are Jules Strongbow, and then in parentheses he says, "Who hasn't arrived as I write this, but I'll already say he looks bad."
Man, crazy Dave, funny Dave, mean Dave.
All right, there's two Junkyard Dog ones, by the way.
Of course.
He says, to say I have no respect for Dog's work rate or wrestling skill would be giving Dog too much credit.
Okay, pause right there. What? How does he get off saying stuff like that? That's so disrespectful to the wrestlers, and like, okay, I don't know. It's like who is he to like? Why should they want to get his respect in the first place? Now I know why all these old carnies hated him, man. Because he just didn't. The way he spoke, it continues in a lot of ways. But yeah, I don't know. That one really bothered me.
This one is about JYD, but is really the shot's really at the Boogie Woogie Man here. Junkyard Dog was injured when Kabuki blew green mist in his eyes and has thankfully disappeared. One Jimmy Valiant is enough.
Jesus Christ. Man.
This one is not too bad, but we'll end with this one. Another guy who was better than I expected was Lanza, although that's more because I expected so little. I'm sad to say Mulligan didn't surprise me at all.
I don't know, man. He reminds me of modern day Danny Geekdom in a lot of ways with this.
It verbiage. Was if you remember, like,
but then again, this is 25-year-old Dave. So
well, that's what I was gonna say. In the late 90s, like early 2000s, when kind of the blogosphere took off and everyone had access to a blog, and you see a lot of people who became writers kind of gained visibility through blogs, but in order to do so, you kind of had to say some wild stuff just to get noticed. And this is almost like Dave's has this like really small newsletter, and he's kind of got to say stuff to get noticed. And it seems like that's where the comedy comes in. Though I had a conversation with him about why he doesn't do comedy anymore. And he says because the audience is he just gets too much heat for it. And
which is sad. It shouldn't be that way.
And people will tell him that, that's this. He also said he believes it's why being the elite went away is because those guys were doing comedy, and then you have something in there that doesn't age well, like Joey Ryan being the star of the show, and then you get like delayed heat for it, as if like you're the person who was doing all the bad things that Joey Ryan was doing. So, so.
No, yeah. That it's a bigger commentary of where comedy is now in general. Like, it's hard for comedy to even exist nowadays because there's so many things they can't say, But to me, like the commentary that I've had for years and I've told people is that satire should be accepted because satire reminds us. It's like a reflection of the world that we live in and all of the injustices and all this stuff. It's not making, we're not laughing at the injustices. We're bringing awareness through that, and I think that satire has always worked really well for that, But unfortunately now a lot of this woke movement which, you know, I think has gone very radical, like too much to the point where I'm uncomfortable with it now. It just lost track of that. And it's like we need people to remind us of the kind of cruel world that we live in so that we could make the changes that we need. But if we don't talk about it, nobody's ever going to know. And it'll live under the surface, you know? So I think comedy is important for that reason. We need to allow the comedians to just make us laugh and remind us of the horrible world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at with all that.
All right, let's talk about some current wrestling before we get out of here. So you said that you had an opinion on this Worlds Collide show and what WWE is doing with it.
I have an opinion on this all or nothing thing. That again, we've been talking about this for years, as far as the mentality of the internet and how everything's supposed to be all or nothing. First of all, I very much disagree with Dave right now. I know Dave is very much pro AEW, but his kind of like catastrophic commentary on where WWE is at compared to AEW and the momentum AEW has, I don't think we're there yet, you know. And I think you kind of agree with me a little bit. Like, I think Dave just get really excited because they just came off a great show, which it was a great show. I love that show. But I think it's not gonna have any effect. You know, it's still WWE is still a monster. They're still a juggernaut. Now, does AEW have momentum? Yes, you could feel it, right? It's there, and I'm excited for AEW. I'm going to the show. Is WWE struggling right now? Absolutely. You know,
you're talking about creatively.
Creative has been lacking, but also there's a little bit you know, there's a swelling, right? Like an underground swelling. Like you could feel finally, because me and you have been talking about this for a year, and we're like, okay, welcome to the club. Finally, you start hearing the rumblings about the price gouging. I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers, you know, with big followings start making videos about that. The creative not being there. Just this like horrible corporate mentality that they've really embraced over the last year or so. The R-Truth release, which was controversial. I didn't really care because it's business, but it hit a lot of people the wrong way. Now, all that to say is that could be true. And also Dave kind of proclaiming the switching of the tide could also be false. You see what I'm saying? Because I don't think a couple of shows are going to turn the tide. They're just not. And also, I think Dave, and it's not a Dave problem, it's a human being problem, because Dave is a human being and he gets excited and he's a fan. The premise itself is wrong in that he goes into these shows and this business, especially from a fan perspective, thinking that match quality is the end all be all, you know, because you'll see him talk about, well, AEW is going to come back at you with 2, 3, 4 good shows in a row. That's really going to turn the tide on people. Whereas WWE's might not have the best shows, but to me, that's not what wrestling is. And that's not what the majority of people see it as. We see it as a presentation, right? As a production, as promotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
The perception, like we talked about earlier. I always think back to the Luchador situation, because Dave is really down on Phoenix, right? Which he should be, because he's essentially a jobber now. Let's be real about it. And also earlier Dragon Lee. But notice how AEW promotes their luchadors compared to WWE. Do they, both companies have them job quite frequently, which, you know, whatever. But in WWE, they're still treated like stars, right? They're still treated, they get the pyro, they get time to them, they get videos. Whereas in AEW, they're just enhancement talent. However, in AEW, they're allowed to show their craft more.
Yeah,
they're allowed to have the 4-star matches or 5-star matches. So from Dave's perspective, they're better off in AEW because they get to work, even though they're always jobbing.
Yeah.
Whereas in WWE, they'll get a win here and there, but they're mostly jobbers. But they're getting the big superstar presentation. Okay, I would rather work for WWE if I was a luchador, because that's gonna help my brand, you know. Whereas, who's gonna remember Commander? No one. He's gonna do his thing.
There's no bigger disconnect that I have with Dave than Commander.
Right. But Dave, again, the he starts with the premise of it. The all be all end all is in ring action. That is his initial premise to everything. And the point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't matter how many shows AEW knocks out of the park from an in ring perspective, work rate perspective. That's not going to change anything, and it hasn't changed anything. And so I very much disagreed with Dave's analysis of like we're seeing the tide is turning or whatever. We're not. And this whole thing about them flooding that weekend of AEW All In is like they've always done that. That's them being bullies, and that's never gonna stop. And it's not gonna hurt WWE one bit. It's just not. They're just doing it to get their rocks off,
So here's something I want to say that you actually talked about, and we have a comment about it from Hyro. But before I get there, I think you're right. Is when Dave watches wrestling as a fan, he's in there for the work, and we just read a list, and he just told us 25-year-old Dave what he liked about wrestling, and he what is entertaining to me? What do I get jazzed up about? And then he's excited to talk about it. But then when he gets down to write the Observer, he does pull it down to be about business. And he talks about all the uphill battle that AEW still has, no matter how many good wrestling shows that they have. And it is way more about what people believe is the number one product. And WWE,
but the narrative is still the silver lining for AEW, always the silver lining for AEW, and the catastrophe for WWE. That's just the way it's been. But that was before AEW. That's been since the 80s.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
But what you were saying, and Hyro, who chimed in, said he's going to Dynamite 300 instead of the WWE LA shows this weekend. And the reason is because of the price gouging that you just said.
Yeah, me too, by the way. I'm excited for that AEW 300.
And that is something. So the guy who's like the president of TKO, his name is Mark Shapiro. He goes on these calls and stuff, and basically what he says is, and he's been saying this for a while, because he's been seeing this in the UFC, and this is what they've done with the UFC, which is, oh, there is so much opportunity in ticket prices for us, which means that he believes that WWE ticket prices were previously underpriced, and now they want to get more on the UFC's level. So if you're a fan and you enjoy going to wrestling shows, this is no different than Donald Trump saying he's going to put tariffs on all this stuff. It just means that you're going to pay more to see the thing that you just paid a certain amount for the longest time.
Right.
And it's so funny how we as fans, because we can see the popularity of WWE, and in a sense, it almost makes us feel like we held on through the tough years just so that they could become popular again, so our friends could tell us, oh yeah, I saw the WWE thing on TV the other day. That was cool. That is almost what we have been sort of waiting for, because growing up, all we were told was, how stupid wrestling was and how fake it was, and we're stupid for watching it. And so now that Mark Shapiro is kind of treating it like a main event product, it's almost like, see, like we knew all along. But at the same time, I'm not paying $300 to go sit for Raw. There's no way. I'll go if I get in with as media, but I'm not paying that much money to watch the product. I'll stay home. I'll let the people who want to pay all that money do it. Like, knock yourself out. I have other ways to spend my money and for entertainment. Like, I've been to several WrestleManias. I really don't need to go again if I never go. But all the point is that when the guy who is in charge of the whole shebang is basically telling the audience, we have been charging you guys less, and now we're going to put a tax on that, and you're going to pay way more than you ever have. The reaction from the audience should be, oh, screw you. I've been here the whole time. Where have you been? You haven't even been here. And yet this audience is like, see, told you we were major league. We've been here the whole time. We're major league, and this is what it takes to be major league. And to me, I'm just like, okay, I'll let, just like what happened to UFC. I'll let all those people pay those high prices. I'll find other ways to entertain myself,
Correct.
which is
No, I
kind
agree.
of the thing, right? And which is what it's wacky to me why this has actually caused more success for them, not less.
Right. And I also don't think that I would be getting my money's worth because again, I just don't like this very cold, disconnected attitude that they've been having. Like, for example, for Money in the Bank, you're just getting 4 matches. That's all. And the prices keep on going higher, but you're getting less product. And you're not guaranteed to go see all the superstars. Minimum, you should be guaranteed to see everyone because you're paying these big, outrageous prices. Whereas with Tony Khan, every pay-per-view he's gonna have just about everyone booked.
Yeah.
And you're guaranteed 4 hours, and they're fun, and it's great work, and the character development has been really good with some of the wrestlers. And so I'm thinking that's value right there. It would be like if I was still getting these Vince McMahon era like 3.5 hour shows. I don't want to go far; it's a little too much, but 3.5 where he's trying to put everybody on the card that's over. Okay, fine, whatever. But I'm not, you're getting half of the roster, if that, and we're just supposed to accept it. We're just supposed to accept it. Let's say I had bought a ticket for LA, and all of a sudden Gunther and Jey Uso just say, "Oh, we're gonna wrestle in Phoenix," and I'm like, bro, like, I just bought a ticket for LA. You're the world champ. This is a pay-per-view or whatever they call it now. Why? I feel insulted that you're gonna have this match in Phoenix. The next day. Or a couple days after,
and instead they give you a tag match that nobody
wants.
For.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started on that. And it's like we have such a limited time with Cena, who can't do anything anymore. By the way, I think it's safe to say that Cena's shot. He's shot worse than Okada, and he just can't do anything, and he won't. And I don't blame him because if you're hurting, you're hurting.
Yeah.
And so we had these. Me and Danny were talking about these dream matches that we had like 3-4 months ago. AJ, CM Punk, maybe Roman Reigns in there. We're not gonna get any of that, man. We're running out of time. We're getting these matches we never asked for.
Next time he faces Cody, he's probably losing the title, and then he's going then he's got to beg for his country back, and then he'll turn.
Yeah, like Sergeant Slaughter, right? But I do disagree with Dave. And again, going back to the bubble. Audience doesn't care because I know one of the things that he was arguing is that now that we're seeing WWE and how much of a bully they can be, and they got their ass out there, right? They're exposing their ass by flooding the market with product on that big weekend, the All-In weekend. And David's like, see, the fan base is going to start to see that, and that's going to turn the perception on AEW. I don't believe that at all because
his comment to me. And we talked about this. We spent quite a bit of time on the last show. Was that the perception is that WWE for no reason is going to end up baby facing AEW when for the last 2 years AEW couldn't even baby face themselves, and he believes that WWE is actually helping AEW get their brand name back because of a lot of the reasons that we just talked about. Now, is it going to be enough to matter?
No.
That's the part where I still have a hard time seeing.
Ultimately, I'm gonna be honest with you. Tony Khan there's a perception problem with him, and that bleeds over to his product. He needs to hire a PR firm or whatever, and he needs to kind of get a gimmick makeover because people still remember. Well, he's got that whole trust fund thing going, right? The trust fund baby thing, which is always gonna haunt him. He can't do anything about it. And the whole billionaire thing, money mark thing, whatever. But also that whole CM Punk thing, I think that's gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. The way he handled all that, and we want to support winners. As a society, we want to support winners. And when we hear that this guy got punked out time and time again, nobody has forgotten that. So I think it's a TK problem as much as it's an AEW problem. Now, again, AEW does have momentum, no doubt about it. But I don't think it's enough. So all of a sudden, we're going to see AEW as these underdogs that are fighting the big monster WWE. I think there's still enough. The WWE fan base are so blind. They're almost like a cult at this point. They're just going to ride this train. They don't care. They're not going to all of a sudden start rooting for AEW because it's not working like that right now.
I will say Tony Khan's gotten a lot better. He's not reacting to WWE, at least right now. He's not doing anything stupid anymore to make him look like a goofball, like wearing
No, he's
the
not.
neck brace on NFL television.
No, he's not. Yeah. He's more behind the scenes too, more than usual. I feel like.
I'm with you though, because the problem is when you're the mouthpiece for the entire company, the perception of you is also how fans see the company, which is why John Cena was always the mouthpiece for the company when he was the champion. Like, this guy he's not going to veer off topic. He's going to stay down the middle. He's going to say the things that he's supposed to say. He's going to smile. He's handsome, and the media is going to love him. Oh, dude, look at this John Cena guy. These wrestlers are ugly, but not this guy. Same with the Miz. The Miz had that little cachet from MTV. He also not going to say anything too crazy. And like, now Rhea Ripley is the other one. She's a little bit more edgy. She's got the tattoos and stuff, but also this woman knows how to freaking smile. Like, just always looks fantastic, like a superstar. Mouthpiece of WWE. Becky Lynch, same way, years ago. Tony Khan cannot be that guy. He's not good at it, for one. And at the end of the day, do you want the billionaire guy playing number two? We're the Pepsi, and it's like, dude, you got like so many billions of dollars, like, don't cry me a river, right? Like, that's kind of the perception as well. So I wish that he would do what you said, which is hire a PR firm, find whomever is the guy, whether it's Ospreay, though Ospreay is kind of out and about in the media and saying wacky things about.
I'm worried about Ospreay. I don't know if he could handle that kind of pressure. I see him as an Eddie Guerrero type, where he could implode on us, because he has that history, and
I worry about Hangman in the same way.
But Ospreay has, I think he's got a lot of mental health issues that he's gone on record with.
Yeah,
and when you get overwhelmed, they tend to flare up.
Yeah,
and I just don't want him. I don't want him to go through that. But again, if you want to be a superstar, you do have to kind of carry that flag for the company and do the media and all that. Whereas I don't know if Hangman has that history, although you could tell that with assumptions that he does have a hard time with a lot of his superstars.
He got CM Punk put the fight game on him. Like, that dude's never been the same. He's getting back to that guy now. Charlie, by the way, said Cody's good at it. Yeah, Cody's the best at it, and he was.
Oh, Cody's awesome. You know who I felt was good until she herself kind of imploded was Britt Baker. In the early years, she was a very good representative. She had a real job, so she was like a blue collar worker that really connected with the average. She was awesome with that.
Very pretty, very photogenic, very good speaker, educated, intelligent, all those things.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think she also has issues, but yeah, she definitely needs somebody. Bryan Danielson's another possibility, but he's way too honest that he'll start criticizing the company when he shouldn't. So they need like a Miz type, they need that guy that could just go around. And right now, when the WWE is kind of on the ropes a little bit, quote unquote, this is where they got to strike right now. They got to just build on that momentum, but we'll see. But I just think, at the end of the day, right now, both products are really healthy, and that's what, as a fan, that's what I like.
Great, it's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to a couple questions from some of the members of the KLB, and then we'll get out of here. From David, what are your thoughts on Shawn Michaels in NXT?
I mean, he's I don't know how much stroke he actually has. I know he's just the booker, but he's bringing them along. I think the women are really, really good. And we are going to have, I think the next 5 to 10 years really look good for the WWE women's division. They have a lot of them on deck. Some of them got promoted already. I think Stephanie Vaquer, if she doesn't implode, because she has a little bit of a shady past herself, she's going to be a big star, By the way, speaking of Stephanie Vaquer, because a lot of people don't know this, when it comes to Mexico, because Dave doesn't cover Mexico, they have a culture kind of like what we have here with American wrestling. There are people that are very dialed in. They get news. It's something that's taken very seriously. And I'm tapped into that because I speak Spanish and I understand like a lot of the YouTube reporters that have their channels. And so I know like a lot of these wrestlers, which ones have baggage, which ones don't, etc. And whereas I think Dave covers Japan more, so we've always been more closer to Japan. But yeah, no, Mexico definitely has a wrestling culture that's news oriented or whatnot. And let's just say that I do worry about Stephanie sometimes because she's has her own little history. But she's one of the women that's just she's improved a lot since she's been able to really adapt to WWE style more so than Julia, I think. And so that's a big star right there. So yeah, when it comes to Shawn Michaels has been doing a really good job with the women. What do you think?
NXT is not a serious show for me. I
don't watch it. I just watch the specials on the weekends.
Like I know Sean's not writing all of the television. He's got his own creative team. It seems like it's just like we can't actually have frat boy television these days because it is too they're too worried about offending anybody. So it's like this version of the G-rated or PG-rated frat boy television in the NXT locker room. Ava is really bad in her role, but her pops is The Rock, so she's gonna be able to do whatever she wants.
But why do they write her like that though? She's bad as a performer, but the verbiage that they give her is just as bad. That's something that could be controlled, and they don't control it.
Unless she's just saying her lines wrong, I agree with you. Because what she is given to say doesn't make any sense.
She's being written to be incompetent.
Yeah, it's almost like she's dumb, and they're writing her to be dumb, and that's not great. But
this is gonna pay off with something later on, and then we're all gonna think back. Oh, okay, we get it now.
The other thing about NXT is I still don't think that they have a great plan on when the wrestlers are actually coming up to the main roster, as we have seen. Like Stephanie Vaquer is a double champion, and then she's not, and then she's got to quickly lose her title again because she's coming up for real. It's like you should know in at least 4-week blocks of television, like if you're bringing her up or not, so that they could do some really good stuff with her on the way out. They did that with her. They did that. I guess if Starks or Saints is coming up, they kind of did that with him in like a rush job. So I still don't like, you would think with Triple H and Shawn being buddies that the connectivity between the main roster and NXT would be better. I still don't think it's great. It's just not a serious show to me. When WWE uses it as the sacrificial lamb, that tells you what you need to know about what they think about it.
Yeah. No, I like I said, I don't really keep up with it. Just watch the big shows. I'm not a fan of Booker T. I just think him as a commentator really disrespects the product. I'm surprised as a veteran he doesn't understand that he really brings down the product by how much of a clown he can be on commentary. Or maybe he doesn't care. Who knows? But yeah, I'm with you on everything you said. It just exists. I've been like that for years. Ever since the first time Triple H got demoted when he couldn't beat AEW and he got punished for it.
Yeah.
That I've never ever really. It's come to the point where I like, should I go back and start, and because I'm sure there's some interesting stuff there. Like a lot of these younger generation guys started like 2021ish around there. But I'm like, nah, it's not fun. It's not fun to me.
The shows aren't that great. That people are okay with them because they know that they're not great. So it's almost like it over delivers for the audience that wants to enjoy them sometimes.
Right.
All right, let's end with this one. It's kind of a biggie from Peter H. Do you expect any more cuts or contracts not being renewed soon? So you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of Triple H. And now I want to preface this by saying we are not trying to say anybody should be cut. If it's up to me, everybody would have a job and get paid forever. Like that's not what I'm about.
And they have the money to do that, and they don't.
Yeah, they absolutely do. But if you're looking at, if you take this last round of cuts and then include Truth, which wasn't a cut, but it was a non-renewal, and Carlito, non-renewal. By the way, they didn't even mention him last night. He was just like disappeared.
Okay. That's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Do you think, because Carlito's a guy that has never, he doesn't care. He's been a rebel. He's always been very outspoken. He's got money. He just won his what was it, the WWC World Title, which I don't know what that means. It's just such a small indie fed nowadays. But anyways, because Dave and Brian were arguing about this, right? Because Dave's thinking Carlito just said what he had to say, even though he wasn't supposed to, and Dave was like, no, but they didn't tell him. But Brian was like, but he only had 2 weeks left on his contract, so he figured it out. You know what I'm saying? I think he wasn't supposed to say that, and he said it like, just stay home, because I do feel like maybe they were gonna write him off the next couple of weeks. It's a possibility, and now all of a sudden he's just gone, and they didn't even bring him up. They should at least made a joke out of it, like put like a mask of Carlito's big head in the back or something. I would have done that, but
do you think that they regret signing Aleister Black, Andrade, and Miro right now?
No, I think they have no idea what to do with them, which is different. And
because those guys probably got signed for good money, and that looks like what they're shedding is mid-carders who make good money.
Yeah, and also I would be, if I was Aleister Black and Miro, Andrade is my future, right? Because that's where I'm going to be in a year. And Andrade is essentially like a lower mid-card guy.
Mm-hmm. They threw him a bone by putting him in the Money in the Bank.
Yeah, but he's not. That's because he could work that kind of match. I
love that guy, by the way. I absolutely still love Andrade, but I just feel he just, for whatever reason, I like when Triple H, going back to Triple H booking NXT, when Triple H brought him in and took the mask off of him, I was like, this dude, if WWE ever leans into a wrestler who is a non-white guy with blonde hair, he could be it. And for whatever reason, it just didn't work.
In both companies, he just doesn't have that charisma that he had in Mexico.
He would have been my Davey Boy Smith on my top 20 workers.
Yeah, but also much like Dynamite Kid with that muscle all the 40 years ago. This guy has also put on a lot of muscle, and it's affected his mobility as well.
Yeah.
But that's what I would, if I was Miro and Aleister Black, I would be like, where am I going to be in a year? Well, Andrade did the same thing a year ago, and look at where he's at. He's kind of floundering. It's very obvious to me that they don't know what to do with either of these guys, and they just literally picked them up, and they're just kind of there. But we'll see. At least Miro has a feud with Sheamus now, whereas Aleister Black is still just kind of treading water. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of either of those guys anyway, to be honest with you. I never have been. So it doesn't really matter to me. We'll see what they do with Mariah May, because I thought she was going to be starting in the main roster, but she's starting in NXT. So,
why they do that? I don't know why, because I think the same as you. I think you get her, you take her right out of AEW TV. She's hot, and you shoot her to the moon, and you tell the AEW wrestlers who are still there, look at what we can do if you come over as well. But I think what they're doing is actually the opposite. They're saying they're their own market, right? They sort of feel like we left AEW in the dust. We're kind of the only game in town again. So what we need to do is we need to lower the free agent market. So Mariah May coming out of AEW probably thinks she's making $1.5 million, and I literally don't have any idea what she's making. But then they can bring it down and go, no, this is what this is how we do it. This is really what you're worth. And you have to go through NXT, what they did to Stephanie Vaquer, who Stephanie Vaquer came out in public and said,
I'm surprised she didn't get heat for that.
Right? Me too. She kind of told us what their plan was, or what their strategy was in bringing over wrestlers. Is if you start them in NXT, you're paying them for the first 3 months of or 6 months of their contract at a much lower price until you have to pay them more. It's like a weird debt thing, or a borrowing against yourself. I don't know, but so anyways, Mariah May.
I was gonna say, did you catch Dave? The word "mark" almost slipped out of his mouth the other day, but I forget what. I don't know if he was talking about how that the whole thing about how wrestlers are now more apt to taking less money.
Yeah.
Or I think he was talking about how like people want to put over each other now instead of wanting to win, like back in the day where wrestlers were business people. But it was something to where he disagreed with the wrestlers, and he was like, they just come out as, and he's paused and he's like, fans, you know. And I was listening to him like, Dave, you almost slipped right there. Be careful. But
So
yeah, no, I agree
let's
with
go.
you.
Let's go through the list. Are there people
I already had it queued up
on
here.
your radar who you think fit the profile?
There's a
of
big
the
one.
folks that they've been letting go.
There's a big one that does. And again, I'm only using the criteria that I think they've been using, which is somebody who's over 40. They're kind of mid-card, big contract. And the obvious one to me that's next is The Miz.
Mm-hmm.
I think The Miz is probably one that's on the chopping block. So I'm looking at The Miz. We'll go back and forth because I have it queued up. Do you have anybody in mind?
I do. I think the one thing that we have to mention is part of this equation is whether or not WWE thinks that they're handing over someone to AEW who is meaningful. So, for instance, my number one would be AJ Styles based on how they use him. However, if AJ Styles still wants to wrestle, he fits AEW better than he actually fits WWE.
Yeah, speaking of marks, Will Ospreay has him on speed dial to get a match going because he loves that guy.
So I just wanted to raise that point. So AJ's actually not on my list because I don't think they want to hand deliver somebody to them. And for the same reason, Bailey is not on my list because I think she and Mercedes, you're putting them back together and then they're just like so happy. So I think the other part of this is that AEW would not be attractive for them, or they would not be great for AEW's fan base. So that's why the Miz works, because I don't know if Tony Khan would even know how to use the Miz.
No, I don't know. The Miz could be the Miz without the WWE umbrella.
Yeah, it's a wacky one.
I do have a couple other ones. Like I think at this point they're probably gonna give up on Austin Theory here very soon. And he's another one that they had big plans for, but he's pretty much been irrelevant for over a year now. So I could see him be on the chopping block. Grayson Waller, he's a comedy guy. He's got that talk show that he does from time to time. They still see. I feel like he still has value in that company. He's young, but Austin Theory is like, once the team's done, what do you do with him? You know, he's just gonna be around. He's gonna be just kind of like, it's a contract you don't have to carry.
All right. Again, I want to preface this by saying these are not our suggestions. These are just people who fit kind of the dynamic.
Yes,
I have one that I sort of thought about. I'm not sure if I'm 100% on, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. This person can go. She has been often injured, and there are now women coming up who probably can replace her, but she does have she is not a blonde hair, blue eyed woman, and that is Asuka. What do you think about Asuka? Would they dump Asuka?
I think so, and I thought about it. First of all, she can't take that name to AEW. You know, she would have to be Kane or Kana or whatever. Kana, I think, was her name before. Now that's one of those girls that has so much respect from everybody in the industry. So Tony is gonna pick her up, but also
he would.
But also I feel like Paul is gonna be like, well, he's gonna pick some people up. That doesn't mean they're gonna make a difference, right? And she's one of them. I have a more controversial one right now that I'm gonna throw at you.
Okay,
but she's one of them, and I could see it. So I agree with you. That's another one that I could see being released, this year. I was gonna say Raquel Rodriguez, because she lost a lot with her injury. Or no, it wasn't her injury. It was she's got the illness that she was dealing with for a long time. And she was, honestly, I'm gonna be honest, she's never been the same since she came back. She had this aura about her as a baby face. And she lost a lot coming back, and now she's just really kind of like a mid. When we're thinking about the female roster, she's just really like mid card. There used to be a time where you were thinking about her as somebody who could headline WrestleMania against a woman or something, but now she's just kind of there. What do you think about that one? That option?
I think it's kind of dependent on if A, they consider the tag team division a thing, and B, if they believe that her act with Liv is like Roxanne could just come in, and is there a need for Raquel, right? Because they've already paired those two up. So that's an interesting one. That's someone that I thought about as well. The other thing, and this is not how I would think, but I can understand how they would think. The thing that I like about Raquel is she doesn't look like everyone else. The thing that they probably don't like Raquel is that she doesn't look like everybody else.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. So actually I'm looking at the roster, and that's pretty much all I got. Everybody else is somebody who, who's still around, who we haven't heard from in like years now, is Kiana James. Whatever happened to her?
I know. She got drafted, and then you haven't heard from her since almost, I think.
Yeah, and then Karrion Kross seems to be getting over him on his own. He got a big pop last night when he showed up in that promo with Sami Zayn.
Who do you think he's doing? What character does he remind you of? Because Paul Fontaine told me he reminds him of Just Joe, and I thought he reminded me more of when
Sean
DDP.
O'Hare?
Well, that's another good one. Remember when DDP was doing that? It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing character for like 10 minutes for Undertaker squashed him. That's who he reminds me of.
Yeah, but that was I think first of all, I think Karrion Kross has that wacky charisma that resonates with a lot of the fan base, because they see themselves with this big muscle guy, so. But I do think he's doing, like, if you were to ask me what actual character besides a wrestling character, I think he's doing the Brad Pitt from Fight Club, which is kind of like that shadow that's kind of always talking to you, and kind of being reflective of how you really feel, but you really don't want to admit to it, because honestly, like, low key, he's been involved. Like, he was the one that really caused the rift between Kofi and what's his name, his partner. I'm blanking. Right?
Big E?
No. The Xavier Woods.
Xavier Woods.
Yeah, in the very original angle where they were supposed to break up, he was the one that was kind of stirring it there a little bit. He was messing with AJ against Logan Paul. So he's been around. This has been around for a while. He just never wrestles because he sucks, and that's smart of Paul to keep him away from wrestling. But he's getting over. There was a big movement to put his shirt on at the arenas, and he got the shirt. Now they're at the arenas. He got a big pop last night, because he was on the chopping block for me. And then once I'm starting to see that he's getting over. So I'm gonna reserve that opinion. So yeah. Other than that, I mean, you always have guys, right? Like
I'll throw some easy ones at you. Nakamura.
No, that's not that. That's a gimme. I'm surprised dude, this guy's so below the radar. I didn't even wait a minute. He might be gone because he wasn't on that Wikipedia roster.
I'm looking at actual WWE's roster page.
Oh, okay. That's the official one then.
Okay, what about Natalya?
She just re-signed though, but that's never stopped them. That hasn't stopped them before, huh?
Ridge Holland.
He needs to go. I know that made me sound like a dick right there, but
and another guy.
Here he is.
Another guy who
the Gorillas of Destiny didn't get over. They need to go. I'm sorry, but
I was going to ask you about him. But Apollo Crews, also someone who's probably not long for the roster. But I was going to ask you about Tama Tonga. What do you think about Tama Tonga?
I was so excited when he first signed, and he hasn't done anything. He comes out there and
he
starts barking. He's hurt. Both of them.
Okay.
Both of the brothers are hurt.
Okay.
Tongaloa and Tama Tonga. But now they have who's on the chopping block is JC Mattel, brother. I'm gonna be honest with you, because what happened to him? Like, this is a completely different guy. Like, you know what he remember when Vince would bring these guys like a Jeff Cobb, and he would give up on them like 2 weeks later. If this was the Vince era, he would have been off television by now, because
I think it's based on what they think about Solo. Yeah, I'll give Solo some credit. I don't know. I don't think you can win most improved by actually getting worse in the ring, but his character, he's showing so much personality, so much so that my kid who, my kid who, when he was 5 years old, he was like throwing worked rock punches, which is, that's how much into wrestling he was.
Right.
He only really watches wrestling through TikTok videos now.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, who's my favorite? And I was like, I probably named a couple. He's like, no, Solo. I was like, Solo? Like, what do you mean? And he's like, every time he cuts off Jacob Fatu and says his catchphrase, and then when when he just looks Jacob in his eyes, and and Jacob finally said that he loved him, and Solo said something like, "Oh man, I've been waiting for that one for a long time," or something like that.
I
Just
remember that. Yeah.
deadpanning to Jeff Cobb. My kid just dies laughing. So it's working. I just don't know that it's like, how do you measure, TikTok, that, like, my kid's not paying any money to watch wrestling by watching videos of TikTok. So
Yeah.
but go back to Cobb.
Well. Also, I'm busting a Dave here, and I remember his first match. They made him work in those slacks with
LA Knight.
With the belly hanging out, and So I was like, I don't know, man. I was Dave from '85. I'm like, he needs to lose some weight here.
He's in the land of giants as well. Jeff's not much taller than me. Like,
Yeah,
he's just a beast.
He's very kick and punch, and that finisher is not the most awesome looking finisher. I don't know. We'll see, but I just see him one of those guys that's gonna get lost in the shuffle pretty soon.
We'll see. He is in his 40s as well, or in his older 30s. So
I do like that standing moonsault he does without spreading his arms. That's pretty cool.
The thing about Jeff losing weight, he did bulk up for Japan. When he went to Japan, he got a lot bigger, because he used to be able to do not only, and this is when I would see him, back in the day. This is like more than 10 years ago. Not only would he be able to do the Okada drop kick in the corner, where the standing drop kick, he was doing the Brock Lesnar off the top rope back in the day, and
the
shooting star.
Oh wow!
I've seen him do that in matches before. So that's how athletic he was. But that was also had to be about 50 pounds ago in 10 years or so. So
and
he's never going to be that guy.
Too.
Yeah, he's never going to be that guy again. But he obviously, I'm rooting for him like crazy, but it's gonna be interesting in how they see him. And he, I think this was for him. He was like, it's my last shot, and you got to take it.
From the interviews that he gave, it felt like he had a lot of leverage in this. Like, it was more like, because he stated they've been coming to me for a couple of times, and I told them no. This time I told them yes. So they've been on, he's been on the radar for years, and then he finally said yes. But it also seems like, well, if it doesn't work out, then I'll just go back to the Indies. I was doing fine there, and I'm cool. Plus AEW they've been wanting him. So, but he's one of those guys, much like the Motor City Machine Guns, right? Where I'm a big fan of. I've been following them. Remember, he was Matanza here in Lucha Underground, so I know him pretty well as well. And to me, it's like, you know what? Even if it's like a year and a half run, make your money. Make your six figures. Invested, and just because you deserve it. I mean, these guys have been scrounging up the indie scene for years. So if they're gonna get that, first of all, they're getting a hell of a great schedule nowadays, and to be able to get that 6-figure deal. Remember, he didn't have to go to NXT. Jeff Cobb did not go to NXT. He started making that big money off the hop.
Yeah.
So
that was probably the way that they got him, actually.
Yeah, because like we said, he does come off as somebody who had leverage. So we'll see what happens there. But other than that, I mean, those little gimmies, Nakamura, I don't see coming back. Why? I mean, he's just, what else are you gonna do with him? He had his run almost 10 years, which is good. And we'll see what happens. But like you're saying, like, it sucks that anybody loses their job, because it's just, and also I think there's a couple wrestlers that made. It is like a family back there, It's cliche to say it, but I mean, you grow, you get to know these people, and you see them every day. All of a sudden, they're just gone. I mean, that's kind of weird. Like
Yeah.
Carlito's just gone. Imagine like that crew. They've been together for a while, and then one day they just go. And I mean, I know they could text them or but it's just weird.
It is. All right. So next month, we'll be back and we'll talk about the July month, which I mentioned starts with the passing of Vince Sr. So we'll have lots of stuff to talk about because I think WWE they have the Worlds Collide, they have Money in the Bank, and then they go to Saudi Arabia.
Oh my
And then
goodness.
AEW they have these 2 back-to-back 4-hour Wednesday night shows, 2
Oh, so
weeks
it's
in a
2
row.
weeks.
I think it's 2 weeks in a row.
Oh wow.
And then they go to Mexico City for the week. And then by the time they come back, they have some themed shows before they get to All In. So we'll have lots of current stuff to talk about in addition to the
Oh man, there's a
1984
lot.
stuff.
WWE has been getting carried away with these PLEs. I mean, it seems like every weekend now they have one, and it's too much. Saturday night's main events and PLEs and just a way to mess with AEW. But I don't know.
I know.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's a lot. And, I'm of the opinion that I don't think it's going to hurt anything. But when you make your own fan base pick and choose, that's not great. You want your fan base to be able to watch all the things that they want to watch. I don't know if it hurts AEW. It may hurt them a little bit, but I think it actually hurts the NXT product more than anything else.
Right. And yeah, I'm thinking I'm not gonna go to Money in the Bank. That's too expensive for me at this point. But there were some good, decent, like $60 seats for the AAA show. So I might just go down there last minute because there was some good deals there. And then just come back and watch Money in the Bank at home and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do want to go to that AAA show just because I'm curious to see how they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Is it gonna? I've been to legit AAA shows, and I just can't see them doing that production. It's gonna be kind of weird to be there, and if it's all like polished and stuff, I'm like, okay, they're dead.
Yeah.
This is the WWE's version of AEW. I mean, not AEW, AAA.
Antonio Pena, man, someone asked a question on Wrestling Observer Radio last night if he was still around, what he would think about it.
He would want to sell. He was a big fan of Vince.
Yeah,
he looked up to him. So
all right. Thanks for doing this. I had a blast. This is
always fun. Thank you.
Always fun. And we'll be back next month. So for Draven, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.